We're back at the Sleeping Grush Inn. There's a cozy roaring fire in the fireplace, mugs of fine drink on the table, and bowls of savory stew in front of us. Welcome one, welcome all. Pull up a seat and let's hear tale of your adventures in Phalon. I'm Lore Master Matt.
And I'm Phalon Jon.
And welcome to the Sleeping Grush podcast. We are here courtesy of Cardboard Corner Cafe, the finest gaming cafe in Kansas City. You're in Kansas City and looking for a place to hang out, play some games, meet some like-minded folk. Cardboard Corner Cafe in both Overland Park and Lenexa is your destination.
Now, if you're in Kansas right now and you go looking for us, you wouldn't find us.
John, it's so true. We are coming to you today from 4 different locations in 3 different states at that. We are dispersed for the Thanksgiving week. John, where are you coming from today?
I am in Saco, Maine.
Nice. I am coming from
visiting family for Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Sweet. I am coming from the beautiful burg of Auric, my hometown. Jager, where are you at today?
Oh, there we go. Now the recording here, see? Yeah, you're making me unmute myself and get this sorted. I'm coming from Independence, Missouri.
Awesome. And our very special guest, Colin Scott, coming from where today, Colin?
Royal Oak, Michigan.
Nice. Colin is the head of the freeblades division here for DGS Games. He is on our design team, and we have him here for a very special Sleeping Grush podcast. Before we get into our main topic, though, Colin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what's on your paint table right now?
On my paint table right now, getting some backlog done with my shock room. Just actually finished a shell back most recently to help fill out my shock room beyond just having 1 or 2 effective lists I can put on the table.
Nice. How do your Eclipse feel about that?
Well, as my local group has respectfully asked that I don't play them, they don't get much of a vote. They got tired of Eclipse popping out of nowhere and shanking them in the back, and they've, for at least casual play, they've asked that I shelve them for the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, if our listeners want to share what's on their table, I want you guys to make sure to drop by our social medias on Fridays, where we host Phalon Friday, and you can show off what you've been working on that week, drop a few pics, get some encouragement from the community. It's a fine way to show off what you're doing and get a pick-me-up. Colin, tell us a little bit about a game that you played recently, a game of freeblades or a brightsword, whichever one you'd like to expand upon.
Well, sadly, I haven't played any brightsword recently, so we'll have to stick with freeblades. My RPG time has been taken up with other games lately. That moment.
Good.
But for freeblades, had a recent playtest game I was actually doing, so I was a full proxy force. Unfortunately, means I can't talk too much about what I did on the table, but it really highlighted something that John and I have talked about, for lack of a better term, tactical patience. I was able to draw an opponent in to overcommitting, and because I won initiative, but I chose not to move up and move into their charge into range where they could easily get to me. So they had to either choose to not engage me that turn, or made the choice they did, which was charge everything to the very limit of their speed, which really made it so I got to pick who got engaged by what. And I also had a couple of counter moves to add people to those fights. So it really drove home that point that John's been talking a lot with the rules team about, how you have to be patient sometimes when you take your turns, especially if you look at down the board and you see that It's a situation where if you move up, you're going to get a bad engagement. So sometimes you choose not to move, not to engage, and you wait for the better opportunity.
That's an interesting point, Colin, and one that I see play out a lot on the tables here in Kansas City. John, would you like to add anything to that discussion of overcommitting or tactical patience?
No, we've talked about it here on the podcast before. When we get into the meat of the game of freeblades and the initiative system, people are, they want to get into it. They want to roll dice. They want to have a fight. And sometimes those situations aren't necessarily advantageous for them, but they do it anyway because I just want to get in there and have a battle. And if you're just playing the game, who cares? It's awesome. If you're playing competitively, that could be challenging sometimes. And the reason why it comes up inside the rule team is because we are looking at maybe having that be not less of a thing. I mean, choosing your time to fight and commit is an important, in any kind of war game, any kind of game, whether it's battles. But to not have the choices be a little bit more obvious to a player and less dangerous to someone new is why we've been talking about it. So, something for the future.
Yeah, it sounds like a great conversation.
All right, talking about it, Matt, and you know that, right? So
that's right. That's right. So we have an interesting show lined out for you. Those of you who have got online and downloaded it, Freeblades Living Rulebook 24.3 is out as of this recording, which is taking place on Tuesday. It was released yesterday. We packed a whole bunch into this update, didn't we, John?
Yeah, and before we get into the meat of it, I just want to say, having just been part of the team that completes it and puts it online just to finishing touches, it is no, and I play, as you know, and Colin just mentioned it. We play other games, that will be mentioned not today, right? But there's nobody giving you the value we're giving you. If you already own this rule book, you picked it up for free by going to your account and downloading the new version. And if you didn't, you bought it for $10. And we just significantly upped the game in terms of options available to you and just added major new content for no money. And there's nobody else in the industry is doing it the way we're doing it. So take advantage, I say.
Yeah, absolutely take advantage. And those different options and some of the things that we added are what we asked Colin on to talk about today and what we're going to have as the meat of our conversation. And the first thing I want to touch on is the Grular. If you download 24.3, you're going to see some major changes to the Grular. And Colin, I think the first question that's probably going to pop in everybody's mind is, why did we start tinkering with the Grular?
So there's a few things here. First one, they weren't performing in quite the same manner we were looking for them to perform. It wasn't that they were bad, but there was a certain feel that we as DGS wanted to capture with the Grular, the raiders, the horse masters, and a little bit of that. And what we were seeing a lot out of Grular was instead they were playing second fiddle to the demons in their stat summary. They were support models to a primarily demon force. That's not really what we envisioned for them. The fact that the demons were in their overall faction stat summary was a compromise that was made some time ago when Jon and the team at the time were trying to get the game out. And it's a compromise that got the game out the door, which was great. But this was a chance for us to relook at that and maybe bring them back more in line with what they were intended to be.
Yeah, we've heard the story. We've talked about it before about how the first game came out, the first version of the game came out, and how the Grular and the demons ended up together. So I love the fact that at this point where we're starting to be able to have the options to do some different things, we're going back and revisiting that and turning it into the original vision. And I love that about our game, and I love that about our team, that we're always looking forward. We're always looking for ways to make it better, and we're working towards that on a daily basis. So, Colin, what new rules are we going to find in 24.3 for the Grular?
Oh, for the Grular in particular, or in general?
For the Grular in particular.
All right, so the Grular pick up a few new talents in 24.3. One of the things that we identified early in our redesign or revision process, it's not a full redesign because many of the stat lines are very similar, if not the same as what they were, is that Grular really make use of their own static defense. They don't tend to do a lot, though they have some parry or dodge or things that replace their defense value with a die roll. And we wanted to keep that theme going, so we added a few new talents for them. The new ones in particular are leading target on some of their mounted stuff, which makes it so that target is never considered the closest, and you always have to test to shoot at it. So it allows a marauder to run around and take shots and actually force tests on your opponent to try and hit them, because they're going so fast that you're having a hard time getting a good shot at them. There's also hard target, which is another talent. It's meant to help mitigate incoming ranged attacks. It works by amplifying the negatives on an opponent's ranged attack. But the big one that you're going to find and you're going to see seated throughout the new revised Grular is Menace. Menace is kind of a lightweight fear effect that's for melee only, but it can be triggered during the optional talent step of all melees. And they do an opposed test with the opponent to force penalties on their attacks. So it doesn't make the Grular's defense higher or replace their defense value. It actually hinders your opponent's ability to attack the Grular model. Okay. You're going to see it kind of seated throughout.
That's awesome. So, Jon, how do these new rules transform the Grular and bring them in line with the new vision?
Well, so what we wanted was, and there's some other ones that Colin's going to be talking to add to the conversation, but the Grular are a nomadic people. They have one city that's really just a giant semi-mobile trade, post. And the rest of the time they're in the saddle and they move around in their yurts and their wagon loggers and whatever. And so movement and doing things on horseback are a component that we just couldn't get out of the original release of the Grular. Yes, in the Brightsword War, they do ally with demons for a specific conflict and to do certain things, but that, like Colin said, that was too much of their nature as we built them originally. And we want to bring them back to a mobile raiding force and to feel like you're a part of a mobile raiding force. And so the synergies between the different slight alterations or upgrades or additional talents is to allow you to get that feel. You're not going to be locked in a battle line skirmishing, with heavily armored troops. You're going to be darting around, shooting your combats, and moving very quickly relative to most other freeblades.
Very nice. Now, Colin, Jon mentioned a couple of other rules. What are those?
As far as new Grular stuff, I mean, that's the big.
Well, I was thinking, Colin, I was talking about what was in my head right then was Depth Rider.
Well, it's not new, but it's
not new.
Expanded into a new place, specifically on a follower cavalry model, which hasn't been done before. So the Raider pick up veteran Deft Rider to allow you to have probably the fastest cheap model that you'll see in the game for quite a while. Yeah, speed 10 and be able to still do objectives, it's going to be a big game changer for people as they get into the new Grular.
That's awesome. So the new releases for the Black Friday event, which is a day away as we're recording this, but by the time you all hear this, it's going to be, in the rear view. You're going to be on the backside of it. it's going to release a new Grular model called the Fearbringer. Colin, how do these new rules synergize with the rules for the Fearbringer?
So the new rules aren't actually built to synergize with the Fearbringer. The Fearbringers actually is put in there to offer a second way to approach Grular list building and Grular play. And that's to focus on fear and causing fear tests. And Fearbringer has the ability to throw an AoE weapon that causes a fear test on all opponents and opponents only that are hit by it. Additionally, fear tests nearby the Fearbringer are more difficult for your opponent to pass. What that means is you can go all in on that fear build, bring a demon or ally or two, because even though they've been removed from the faction stat summary, they are ally trusted to the Grular. So you can still bring a demon or two in your force, grab a fear-causing model there, and you can really supercharge a warlock, letting them go use magic, with much more abandon than other players can afford to do, because they're going to be getting back power due to failed fear tests more commonly than most anybody else or any other build could achieve.
Right. So one of the things I think that John touched on last week was that the Grular are going to revolve around fear and speed. Is that right, John?
Yeah, I think those are the two fundamental themes for building a list.
Yeah, and it sounds like the new rules are really shooting that way, Colin. Let me twist things around a little bit, because we have the new Grular rules, but in 24.3 you're also going to find rules for a new Trazerite model. Can we talk about that for a minute, Colin?
Absolutely. So the new Trazerite model is the Legionnaire Recruit. So this model represents a...
Well, let me interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
So the new model is the Doom Crawler. The Legionnaire Recruit is a new stat line for an existing model.
That's right. That's my mistake. I apologize for that.
That's right. But you meant the Legionnaire Recruit, right, Matt?
I did. Yes, I definitely did.
So it's the Legionnaire model, but used in a different way. So.
Yeah, I apologize as well. You're absolutely right. Legionnaire Recruit is something we've noticed. We love the Legionnaire model. We love the way it plays, but we recognize that some players are turned off or scared off by the fact that you have a over 20 gold follower with a single life point. Some people just shy away from that. So what we wanted to do is offer another way to approach a Legionnaire. So that the Legionnaire Recruit, little lower stat line, little less armor, but they come in at 17 gold. So they still are a premium follower as compared to most followers in the game, but a little more approachable, a little easier to get one and fit it into the list for some players.
Okay, and John, how do you see the Legionnaire Recruit playing in a Trazerite free band?
Well, I think Colin's touched on it. The Legionnaire model as it stands with its basic stat line is the way we see that soldier. Somebody had to be on top. Some soldier of one of the armies of our world, the world of Phalon, has to be the best trained, the best equipped. It's just, who's on the top of the heap, right? And that's the Trazerite Legionnaire. So they're professionally trained. They're given all the best equipment. They, are veterans of many campaigns, yada, yada. But to do that, these things have value, right? I mean, the better a model is in all these different categories, its cost goes up to recruit it into your free band. And at 21 gold, that might be prohibitive, to various kinds of styles of play, right? So I have a free band, for example, 250 with multiple Legionnaires in it, but you got to give up something else somewhere, And what are you not taking? You're not taking your extra hero, 6th hero. You're not taking a caster. what are you not going to play with because it's a 0-sum game and you're playing a points-based game. With a Legionnaire at 17, that becomes less of an issue, and he can still do. The model can still do the things a Legionnaire can do, not quite as good as a Legionnaire does them, but still substantially better than many other followers. And so it makes a Legionnaire-focused build more achievable. And you know, these in quote unquote real life, right? In the real
IRL.
fail, yeah, right. There would be uneven training and equipping across all the different armies. You wouldn't have everybody perfectly well, equipped. Nobody's armies like that. Fantasy world, real world, doesn't matter. So you would have newer recruits and legions that didn't have access to the full suite of the best equipment. People that were brand new to the course, hadn't been trained, weren't highly motivated, whatever the cause. And so this soldier fits. We could do it with other lists too if it becomes interesting enough to people. This is a very easy thing to put into the game.
Yeah, I was just scribbling some notes here. You might have heard my magic marker going. We have, I know, right? We have some, in the background, we have these legions that are recruited from amongst some of the smaller areas within the Empire.
Yeah.
Right. And I was just thinking, that would make an interesting model for those soldiers that wouldn't have received the same training or the same equipment, just in case one of them decided to rebel or something,
yeah. As part of the NFC work I'm doing for the campaign that starts in January, I'm in and out of World Anvil all the time. And one long-standing project you and I have is to get in there and clean that operation up and make it more user-friendly, connect more of the content that's in there and provide more content, and an expansive look at the legions of the Trazerites, and then maybe the same thing for the armies of the other, to give players some options and to give them some, connected bits in there that says, okay, I'm playing this malicious spearman, but what if the guy wasn't as well armored? What if the guy didn't? Do they always come with shields, or do sometimes we grab a bunch of guys, give them spears, and put them into the line?
Right.
And so it's very exploring some of those variants to the baseline.
Interesting. Yeah, that's gonna make this kind of thought process is gonna make for some real interesting play. All right, Colin, I'm gonna throw you a curveball next. I didn't put this question in the things that I sent you this morning. Oh, I know, it's awful. It's terrible of me. But I just thought about it, and I think it's a good question. So we have all these other new models that have come out with the Black Friday release, and you, of course, we had your hands deep in making rules for them. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe a couple of the new rules that go with the new models and how you're expecting them to play in the game?
Yeah, so I've already mentioned a little bit the Career Bringer, so I'm going to leave that one alone. So we've kind of already covered that a little bit. I think the thing I'd like to highlight, because it's probably going to be the biggest shift in the game for the new models and new stuff, is the familiars, and specifically the familiar rule in particular. So familiars, we know we've already mentioned on this podcast, are animals that are bonded to spirit magic casters. So they create a mystic bond. It's done outside the game. You buy your familiar, you bring them in the game. But the familiar rule itself has some interesting nuance to it that I'm going to bring up here. It allows the spirit caster that has bonded to their familiar to use spell projector through that familiar. So that means you can extend your spells, similar to what we've seen with the Coronans in the past, where you can, within 6 inches, whether you can see them or not, or up to 12 inches away, if you can see them, you can extend the range of your spells. But the other one that's going to really catch people and make the familiars very interesting is the second half of their rule. Each familiar comes with a meta magic talent, something like Intensify Spell. We have even a couple of new ones in there. Sympathetic Spell Elimination. So we have a few new ones. But when you cast a spell through the familiar, that has their meta magic, you get to use that familiar's meta magic for free. So your choice of familiar actually can change the way your caster plays at a pretty fundamental level. Because if you say take a skunk familiar, which allows turning a spell into a small aura around the skunk, that's very different than if you say take a wolf familiar and they have a new spell. There's a spell shift. It lets you move your caster slightly when you cast the spell. So each one of these things is going to really change how your caster might play, because you're getting access to something through the familiar that really can make a big difference and open up new possibilities in list building.
I'd like to step in and give a specific example. I know it'll be near and dear to Matt's heart for sure, because I think he saw part of this in action one night. So, for example, and I was going to terrify some of our friends with it, but if they're paying attention to the podcast, they'll benefit from being, forewarned, right? So, let's say that you were playing a game, and I'm gonna pick on Jacob Metzger a little bit, but I know he can take it. Good dude. We talked about that game in a previous podcast where I had Dark Road Demons, and he had a Moon Talon, and the carry-out got to a position where I could see it and threw Encase on it, right? That spell, you take it a post-strength tester, you can't move and you take some damage. So you can pin a model for a turn if you're successful, right? So there's a couple options. If I take if I do the same thing, the same list, and I take let's see which familiar it is I'm thinking of. Which one has Spellbender called the Fox familiar has the Spellbender meta magic talent. I don't have to worry about LOS, right? The Fox comes with Spellbender. Okay, the Spellbender talent says, you spend 3 power to remove the requirement for a spell that line of sight. And then if I take the familiar, I get his or its meta magic talent for free. That's what Colin was telling us a moment ago. So this Encase spell could be thrown, line of sight, right? Now, the premium there is the 12 points I spent for this box, and it's also a very killable critter once you get, locked on, once you figure out where it is, get to its guy talent, get near it, whatever. And for me, it would mean removing a hanging latcher from the list, another 12-point model. Or worse, I'd take a owl familiar with intensify spell and make the strength test that the model takes to avoid remaining encased even worse by dropping their ability to resist it. Now I'd have to lose more than a hang because it's 14 points. Owls are pretty expensive as familiars. They're on the top end of that. But but it works, right? So there's a lot of little synergies and combinations in there that we've been playtesting with and we're aware of that the players are only now getting in contact with that have not been in the game anywhere. They've been in the game with, meta magic talents have been in the game. Some casters come with them, and some casters get them as part of campaigns. They make those choices when they get an advancement, but it's not been, as possibly dominant something about to be, at least with the spirit casters. So it's something to look for.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I think it goes back to our ability to take something that exists in the world now and exists in the game and then make even more of it. And I love that about freeblades. Obviously, I say that as part of the company, but if I was a player, I would absolutely adore the idea that you get more bang for your buck out of existing models. With the slight additions of a couple things going on. And the Fox, already part of the Animal Swarm packet, so we didn't need to make a new model for that. We just packaged it differently.
Right.
All right, so out of all of these new models that you've been working on for the last over a year, Colin, but the ones that are coming out in this new release, the Black Friday release, what was your favorite to work on and why?
Oh, So my favorite to work on, probably the combination of the fox and not the fox, the wolf and the owl, specifically the spirit wolf and the spirit owl. Those drew me to Corona a long time ago. For those who haven't seen it, you can go look back at some of the older artwork. The owl and wolf are featured with their respective casters, the priestess and priest for Corona. And it was really satisfying to bring those out of the art and finally get them onto a table and into the book.
Yeah, I bet it was. And I love Corona. I play a Coronan Force, and I'm really looking forward to incorporating the Spirit Familiars into them. And they have been. In fact, I'm staring at your avatar on Discord right now, and it is in fact the Moon's Priest with the wolf behind. That's awesome. So, Colin, what's next for freeblades? What are you working on right now? We're not going to get too spoily here, but the new year and the coming year are going to see a lot of new things for freeblades. What can you talk about?
So, as you said, we're not going to get too spoily yet. I know there's been rumors abounding, but as I said, that's what I've been working on. I mentioned my latest game was actually a playtest with them. I can see by your notes here what we'd like to bring up is John teased in a previous podcast, there's a new primary skill, and I know we're still working the name primary skill, but a new skill coming in with this free band that is at the same level as perform or mar or rar or magic use. So we'll tease that a little bit here. The new skill that's coming out with these guys is called Focus, and it is not magic, but it is an internally focused ability that this free band draws upon to do things that others would consider superhuman. And there's a whole new way to approach the game when you're running this free band and these guys that uses that to create really dynamic things on the table that are just a ton of fun to play with.
I bet it is. And you'll be seeing more of that as we go forward, of course. For those of you who are Patreon subscribers, you're already starting to see some of this new stuff that's coming out. And, we ask that you keep your finger to your lips on that and let everybody be surprised when it comes out. But you know what's coming. And with what Colin just talked about, I think you can start to put together a couple of really cool things. And of course, our playtesters are, knee deep in that stuff right now. So that's pretty awesome. So,
well, I'd like to expand on that a little bit. Bringing out a new primary skill and a new thing like this means the playtesters have been seeing this for over a year, because bringing something this big to the game requires a very long playtest even once it gets out of our internal, we get out there early as possible, because it's going to change the landscape, and we need to know how.
Right.
What we haven't talked about here is that in the category of what's next for freeblades is we're firing Colin.
Let's talk about that, John.
So yes, let's. So Colin's done such a good job with freeblades. We're going to kick him upstairs and give him his own world to play in. And we're going to do obviously we're going to do a future podcast all about that. But the ramifications are the things that Colin just talked about are and of course, none of us will ever leave freeblades. Since I'm being funny about that, but Colin's going to be the lead designer for a brand new game world. Something we're extremely excited about, because we've always wanted to have more than one. We wanted to give players all kinds of options for different genres and settings and things to identify with. And you can't do that unless you have two lead design teams, right? Some other companies have had success, opened with a particular genre, had a lot of success, opened a second one, still have the same people trying to do both. And so I'm going to be taking back over, quote unquote, freeblades as the person watching over it after this group that Colin's talking about to bring this new property still, and he's off to do even bigger things with a whole new world to be on a parallel with, and adjacent to the world of Phelan in terms of its scope and all the things that we're going to do with it. And then we're going to, work on one of the things that's new for freeblades in the future is we're going to work on having these two game lines be similar enough in their core rules and have those core rules be streamlined enough that we make it easy on the players to move back and forth between the two worlds if they choose to do so. So that's also an exciting thing.
That is an exciting thing.
So obviously, Colin got this new pre-band right, or probably wouldn't have done that. Right?
I don't know, they might have fired me, but they wanted to give me my own game world.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
We'd like to thank Colin for dropping by today. This is Thanksgiving week that we're recording this in, so we're all making preparations for our celebrations and spending time with family, and some of us have time off, and so all of these things are getting in the way, so to speak. So I'm really thankful that Colin could take some time out of his week and share with us. And so thank you, Colin. Thank you for dropping by. Thank you for sharing your insight with us. Stick around, of course, Colin, because we've got one more thing going on, and you might want to add something to this.
My pleasure. I'll stick around.
And that's our job board, which for the first time now we have a question that was dropped on Discord. So at the end of every Sleeping Grush podcast from here going on, we're going to take a little bit of time and we're going to answer some questions that were dropped on the Sleeping Grush channel on Discord. So if you have any questions about the game, about what we talked about, anything, these big why questions, drop those on that channel, and we're going to pick one every week, and we're going to talk about it at the end of the podcast. And today's, John, came out of something that we talked about last week, and that was the expansion of the Simker skin colors.
Yeah, so in thinking about this question, and we talked about this to some degree because we talked about the origins of all these things. And one of the things I've done is I've gone back and listened through all the previous podcast episodes. One, to kind of keep a running list of the things we said we do and make sure we do them. But also, right. You don't want to cover ground a second time in depth. You might mention something a second time, but you want to, refer them back and have a whole podcast to listen to and not, cover the same ground twice, have each thing be unique. So we did touch on this, but the issue is back when the Simker people were invented, they had a role in the upcoming Brightsword War, where they are the primary antagonist. And as a much younger man, I did not want that primary antagonist to be too closely linked to some Earth-based people. They didn't want to insult anybody. I didn't want anybody to feel bad. And we were picking on some group. And of course, I was a child of the 80s in terms of when I was in college. And, every villain, with the exception of Red Dawn, there were some Soviet villains out there, but a lot of the times the villains were, terrorists, right? The old classic trope of somebody admittedly blah blah blah. It could be awful. There's some settings where that might be appropriate story you're trying to tell, but it got to be a little over the top or a lot over the top. So I didn't want to have, anybody feeling, that. So I gave them green skin because nobody's got green skin. That was that was this level thinking, my intentions were good. It was all desire, no skill. So when we, portrayed them, we portrayed them as having quote unquote green skin. The trouble with that is it's artistically difficult and can be artistically maddening. And so after long discussions internally, we have kind of, retconned a little bit the Simker people to just say that their skin is olive. Right, and let the player decide the palette. Let the player decide what that means to them. We'll certainly do some paint recipes, and the more skilled folks on the team will talk about that in the various social media that we have. But let somebody have more broader artistic options. If we have, the Failer people are the equivalent of sort of white or Caucasian. There's a broad spectrum of what that means to an artist. And if the Shaller people are, darker skin, bronze skin, Hispanic, Semitic, whatever, they have a much broader range, wide range of how they can interpret that. And you have Simker green, right? That was extremely limiting and kind of strange. So if you're cool with having someone look like the Wicked Witch of the West, that's awesome. If you're an artist that want to do more of that, we're going to let you do more of that. And so to have because the one of the core stories of the World of Phelan is where these three great peoples meet. And the lower part of the northern continent and the upper part of the southern continent, these cultures clash. Clearly in the League of Thormanol, but overall they're all sort of migrating towards a general central location, and the fault lines of those civilizations give us a lot of our stories, right? And we're going to bring other peoples in from beyond the two continents, but they should be on a footing of rough equivalence. If you've got this broad spectrum of the color palette for Failer skin, you get the broad spectrum of the color palette for Shaller skin, and then you've got Simker, army green, thick green, jade green. It's kind of meh from an artistic standpoint. So white for Failer, bronze for with no further identifiers for the two, and then olive for the Simker people. It's a much more inclusive, much broader artistic, hobbying view of how to represent those folks on the tabletop.
Yeah, and one of the things I'd like to point out now, and we're going to put some pictures up of this in the near future, and I was talking to like Jeff this morning about some of his palettes and things like that. But if you want to look at one of the new expressions of olive, look no further than the Grular Fearbringer. That new figure has an expression of olive that our wonderful studio painter Aaron Newell has used to paint with, and that's going to give you some kind of a clue, kind of a range of the different colors of skin that the Grular people, the Simker people, the Crawlins, the Smidians, and Orans can have.
Yeah, that's what that's about. So,
yep. All right, so we hope that answers the question. It was expressed on Discord, and that means that's undoubtedly on a few of your tongues. So we hope that helps kind of mediate that question. The green isn't going anywhere. You can paint green skin until your fingers fall off if you'd like to. But we do want to make sure that everybody knows that there is a wide range of color palette, not just in the Simker people, but also in the Shaler and the Failer. So
yeah, definitely.
I appreciate that, John. Colin, anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't really have anything much to add with the discussion on the skin tone. I definitely support broadening it, but having not painted many Shaler myself, or not Shaler, excuse me, Simker myself, though that may change hopefully soon. I'm glad to have a little easier way to go about it than going straight up green.
Yeah, definitely. All right, folks, we're running low on time, so we appreciate you being here. Of course, you're gonna hear this later than it is, but happy Thanksgiving. We hope that the Thanksgiving holiday finds you well and thankful. And Until next time, we'll see you around the table.
Osakava.